Welcome back to Candid Conversations on Leadership. We
Hi,
have
Candace.
another special guest with us today.
Who do we have today?
So let me go ahead and read the bio. Cheryl Hanley-Maxwell is the Dean of the College of Applied Health Sciences at the University of Illinois. She has a distinguished career in the fields of rehabilitation and disability. Cheryl earned her bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees in education from the University of Illinois. Before returning to her alma mater, she spent 26 years at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she held various leadership positions and roles contributing significantly to research and education in rehabilitation and disability services. Her interdisciplinary work focused on improving the lives of youth and adults with disabilities, especially those with severe disabilities. This included improving school to adult life transitions, community employment, and independent living. Cheryl is known for her commitment to inclusivity and diversity, implementing numerous initiatives to support students with disabilities and ensure equal opportunities for all. Her leadership style is characterized by a collaborative and inclusive approach, fostering a supportive environment for both students and faculty. Outside of her professional achievements, Cheryl enjoys engaging in community activities and spending time with her family. Her dedication to improving the lives of individuals with disabilities and her contributions to the field of health sciences has made her a respected leader and advocate. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you very much.
I'm very excited for you to be here today. And today we're going to focus on you telling us about your journey and the things that you learned about leadership along the way. So I guess we'll start off with, were there any pivotal moments that were in your career that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think probably one of the biggest things I can say is that my path through leadership has just been by accident.
Oh.
I think nobody goes and gets a PhD thinking, and I'm going to be an administrator someday. They usually think, I'm going to follow my passions. I'm going to pursue the research I want. I'm going to teach, and I'm going to work with my community. Not I'm going to help other people do what they want to do. And yet, that's exactly what leadership is helping other people do what they want to do, which is what I did in my training and which is what I did almost all of my life, too. So it seemed like a natural path. I think probably the two moments that stand out in my life were the first time that I was asked to be the chair of my department at the University of Wisconsin. And I didn't want to do it, but I realized I was the only one that wasn't affiliated with an interesting little political dynamic within the department. And there was nobody else who was going to be able to straddle the middle. So I felt like I had to do it. I didn't like it. I swore I'd never do it again, and yet I did do it again. About 17 years ago, I was on sabbatical, my first sabbatical in my career, and I was diagnosed with cancer. And I thought, okay, now what am I going to do with the rest of my life, whether it's a longer life or a short life? And I started thinking about what is it that I do best. And what I do best is I help other people achieve what they want to achieve. It's been, like I said, it's been who I've been almost all of my life. And so for me, the path was administration then, because I knew that I was going to be able to facilitate the work of other people.
As you've gone through this journey, what are the things that you've found that are really essential to effective leadership?
Listening is number one. It's too easy to have a solution, and you need to really listen to the people around you and be surprised by what you hear and be willing to act on those surprises. That is probably the key to most of what I've done across the course of my career. Oftentimes I think I know what I'm doing, and then I hear somebody else's opinion and I think to myself, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm not right. And so admitting that I'm not right to myself is a very important thing for me.
So you mentioned listening, but I want to go back and talk a little bit about what inspired you to really focus on rehabilitation and disability services.
Okay, I'll start with I'm old. When I was in high school, the Democratic National Convention had occurred in downtown Chicago, and there were all those arrests, a lot of the protests that went on. And I was very much introduced into the civil rights community and into the women's rights movement at that point in my life. I think it might have been 14 or 15. I knew that I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. And I went to my high school counselor and I said, okay, what do I need to do to become an attorney? And he said, oh, Cheryl, law is not a woman's profession. You need to do something different because it's just too intense for women. It's too emotional for women to be in law. Why don't you consider teaching? I had been teaching my friends all of my life, and I really didn't want to be a teacher. And I said to him, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to do what I've done all this time. And he said, well, how about special education? And I didn't even know we had classrooms in our building that had special education in it. And so I started volunteering in the special education classrooms. And I fell in love. I found a piece of my heart that I didn't realize had been missing, that I could actually make a difference in the lives of people from very small things to very large things. And so it was easy for me to move in that direction. And once I got there, I realized that there was a lot of advocacy work that needed to be done. And those who know me well know that sometimes I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut because I want what's right, and I'll speak out for what's right. And that's what I found in special education.
Lovely. I mean, I'm not happy to hear that you were transitioned to a field that you weren't necessarily there, but I am happy that you were able to still advocate and such.
What does that advocacy look like for you?
Before I was a dean, that advocacy looked like all kinds of things, from the articles that I wrote to pieces that I'd write for op-eds in the newspaper, or standing in a picket line, descending on the Wisconsin State Capitol to protest what they were doing to the teachers' unions in Wisconsin, to speaking up in classrooms and meetings, whether it was in the university classrooms and meetings or in other places, to advocating for kids who were not getting services, and the parents would come to me and ask me to advocate for them.
What does it look like as a dean?
Much more circumspect. I can advocate for my college in private meetings with upper administrators, with other deans. I can carefully word the messages that I send out publicly. I've always tried to get those messages as strong as possible. Now I have to edit them even more than I have in the past. But we've taken on some of the issues over the last 8 years and put out messages to the entire college about them. Now it's going to be a little bit different.
So you mentioned how you can advocate as a dean. Are there any significant achievements during your tenure as the dean of AHS that you would like to share?
Well, we've had achievements, but I'm going to go back to my role is to help those around me and to help them move what they want forward. So I think the big things that we've done while I've been here is to definitely grow enrollments and to do a lot of program innovation. I have encouraged that innovation. I've tried to fund that innovation where I can. But I think probably some of the biggest stuff has been some really great hires that we've made in the time that I've been here. And that has led to phenomenal program change as a result of those people being present and being in the right mix with the rest of the faculty.
I love that you're speaking about how the hiring good humans, as Chris would say, really kind of built a nice, wonderful, inclusive community over at AHS.
So in having this team of people that you trust to kind of put out the mission of the college, what is your leadership style in leading the college? How would you describe it, and how has it evolved over the years?
I would say that I have a collaborative leadership approach, like you had said in my introduction. I prefer to sit with people with my administrative team, which includes the department heads and my executive committee, as well as the rest of my administrative team, and gather input and then make decisions from there. Typically, once I've gathered the information and I'm starting to form my decision, I have a couple other people that I will sit with and I will bounce my ideas off of them and receive their feedback on where we're going to go with it. And then if I have to make a decision that's not popular, I'll make a decision that's not popular, but I will have made that well-informed and knowing that of the potential implications for what I've done.
How has that changed over the years for you?
How's it changed over the years? I would say that I am a little bit more introspective and a little bit more aware of the implications or of what I do impacts other people. I've always been someone who always did listen. And in fact, when I was teaching a doctoral seminar, taught it for about 12 years while I was at Wisconsin, the students liked it because I could sit and listen to them and I could distill what they were saying to me and feed it back to them. And then we would negotiate the truth of what they were saying. Yeah. So I've always done that. But I think that I have probably been a little slower to act as the dean, so that I have more time to gather more information and make a very well-informed decision as opposed to what I think is just right.
Yeah, because your decisions as the dean have a lot more impact than other places in your career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've asked this to several guests, but can you describe kind of your personal habits or routines that you think help contribute to the successful dean that you are?
Before I came here, I was walking 5 to 6 miles a day, and that would help me deal with stress. When I got here, I tried to keep that up, and it was a little bit more difficult given my time demands. So I've tried to diversify what I do. I still will try to walk as much as possible, but I am now also working with a personal trainer 2 days a week. And I had to laugh because one of my donors comes to the same place that I work out, and he was watching me throw that heavy medicine ball against the wall, and he said, "Who are you hitting?" And I thought, "Boy, you know me too well on this one." So I think exercising is really important. I also have a commitment, and I've always had this commitment in my career, that unless it's an unusual circumstance, when I go home, I'm home. I'm not halfway in the office, halfway home. And so I take that time to focus on my family, or as my family has grown, me, and try to separate. I will then go back and do some work later in the day or later in the evening, but I need to take those moments where there's nothing. I'm just not the dean. I'm me.
How do you do that unplug? How does it work in reality for you? Do you turn off your phone? How do you do that?
I listen to a book or I read a book. And I do both of them electronically now. I used to read hardcover books, but I don't anymore because there's just too much to carry around. And I don't check my email. That's the key. Don't check your email for a couple hours. The only time I would do that where I would actually interrupt what I'm doing in terms of my reading or my listening to my book is if I knew I was waiting for something that I had to get to. And so I would check periodically. But otherwise, I just don't open up the app and look.
So I have to ask fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, fiction all the way.
Okay.
Yeah, much more interesting.
Do you have a particular genre you like?
Well, I do like mysteries. I like them very much. But do you know the Terry Pratchett books?
I don't. Yeah.
So Terry Pratchett is a satire humorist. He's now dead, but he wrote a series of books called Discworld. And Discworld is a world that's flat because everybody knows the world is flat. It's not round. And it's carried on the backs of elephants through the universe. And then they have these things like the unseen academicals, which are the wizards of the university, and all this other crazy stuff that goes on there. So it's humor, but it's usually a kind of a mystery story to go with it too. So I guess the underlying mystery is still there.
I might have to look those up.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
They're very
Excellent.
good. I was actually laughing to myself the other day when I was listening to one of the books.
Good. It's a good way to unplug your brain from the seriousness of the job, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's actually switch into maybe a more serious topic here. As the dean of AHS, what do you see as the future of health sciences education, and how is our university preparing for that?
I think it's expanding. It's been rapidly expanding. We were growing anyway before COVID, but once COVID hit and people started hearing about public health and started thinking about health, we saw a rapid expansion in terms of the programs and the demands for our classes. Our growth in the college has been steady. I don't foresee that declining. In fact, I see it increasing over the years, especially as you look at us being more and more aware of the aging population, because we also focus on aging and aging with dignity, aging with independence, aging as well as possible. And so I think we're going to see a fair number of students coming to us for that as well. But I do think that this campus is uniquely situated in much of the work that's been done across the campus in the health arena. And once we're able to harness and coordinate that, I think the college is going to be a main leader in all of that.
If you could help our viewers and listeners understand a little bit, what is applied health sciences? I think some people may not get what that means.
It's not medicine.
Yeah.
We are at the bookends of medicine. We are everything prevention. So I have researchers who are working on what's the cellular impact of exercise and how that improves your life, how that improves your muscles. People working in the microbiome, looking at what you eat and do, how that affects every piece of your body and your mind. And all of that's based in prevention. But we're also on the intervention side, which is outside of medicine. So speech and hearing science, looking at finding the right ways to handle cochlear implants and teach people how to use the residual hearing that they have. People working on language in young children with multiple disabilities or children with autism. Again, that's in the prevention realm, but it's also intervention there because we're actually doing something with it. And then it's post-disease and disability and adjusting to disability, adjusting to disease, and then which includes aging because you're going to become more disabled and more ill as you age, and living the highest quality of life that you have. So we're literally the bookends of medicine.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. I think a lot of people will understand that a little bit better through that.
So earlier in the podcast, you mentioned listening was a key thing that you had to do. Is there a piece of feedback that you received early on that was hard to receive, but ultimately it made you better?
Yeah, and it wasn't when I was doing leadership. I worked for 4 years at the Rehab Institute at Southern Illinois before I went to the University of Wisconsin. And I had an informal mentor when I was down there. And I had been doing my usual responding and advocating for the things that I want. And he finally said to me, you can't advocate for everything and you can't criticize everything. You have to prioritize and go after the things that are most important.
How did that affect your approach? I mean, is there a practical example of maybe where you wanted to make a statement or advocate for something and you're like, that's not a hill I want to die on today?
Yeah, it actually caused me to pause more often, to not just be in the moment. I tended to be very much in the moment up until that point. And once he had said that to me, I would stop and reflect before I would respond or before I would make a comment, because I also can have a biting side to my comments, and I think that died out as a result of that.
What advice would you give to leaders kind of coming up in this field? And in particular, maybe what advice would you give to young academics who might be considering a move towards administration?
Know yourself and know your values. Never, never compromise your values. I would leave before I'd compromise my values. And I think that's one of the things that allows me to sleep at night. I have not undone something that I feel very strongly about. The second, I think, would be try to take a long-term look rather than the short-term look, because some things look very dire in the short term, but when you play them out, you realize they're not as important as they really were, and that there may be a slightly different path to get you to the end goal. And then lastly, understand you don't know everything. And I think that's where I see some of the biggest danger in young leaders in training is they think that they know everything, and they're going to then go barreling down the hill without thinking about the people that they're bowling over as they're going down the hill. That, I think, has probably been the key to almost everything that I've done in leadership is I don't know it all, so gathering all that information.
Yeah, excellent. I love that you're mentioning they need self-awareness. These are just very good nuggets. Thank you very much, Cheryl, for sharing. So you mentioned that you can't let your values they have to be forefront. Will you share some of the values that are your guiding path or your guiding post?
I think one of the biggest ones that has been in my life, my entire life, is do no harm. I was taught from a very young age that you don't have to be mean to get what you want, and you don't have to always get what you want either. I can still hear my mom saying, when you hurt somebody, you hurt yourself. So it's hurting two people at the same time. I saw my parents do things that I would never have done. I never would have thought they would have done, but they did it because they felt that they were responsible for other people. And so that's been a guiding path for me, is that do no harm. I'm responsible for other people's lives. But I think the other guiding principle is that I believe that everybody, regardless of who they are, has dignity and worth, and that should show in everything that we do.
Yeah, both of those are beautiful. Like really great North Stars to have in the sky.
You can tell I'm a 70s kid.
Yeah. No, and that comes from, you were an advocate from an early age, and, those things have been embedded in you, and they're just beautiful. So Thank you for sharing those. This podcast is called Candid Conversations. And so we always ask, what do most people not know about you?
I hate exercising. That's probably the biggest thing. I mean, I don't mind it when I'm doing it, but I hate thinking about it. And then after I'm done, I'm really relieved. So
how do you motivate yourself to do it? You talked earlier that that's incredibly important to you to sort of keep yourself grounded during the day. What's the motivation when you don't like doing it?
I have to keep reminding myself how much better I feel after I'm done. And I think the best way for me to keep that I always keep in my head was when I was doing all the walking that I was doing before I came here. I would start out saying, I'm just going to do 5 minutes. I'm just going to do 10 minutes. I'm just going to do 15 minutes. And once I'd gotten that far, then I would remind myself that I was feeling better with each step that I took. And so I use that as well. But don't give me an excuse because I won't go. So it's important for me to just, keep that in the top of my mind that it's really important.
Do you start your day with it, or is it?
No, at the end of the day.
End of the day.
No, I work it all off at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that
Same.
catharsis.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So finally, I guess we'll kind of wrap up now. What do you hope that our listeners and our viewers will take from the conversation?
That leadership shouldn't be about you, that it should be about the group that you're working with, and that when you can help a group move forward, that is the biggest reward you can get as a leader.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and Candace knows you a little bit more than I do since she's working in the same college. But I think our viewers and listeners are going to get great wisdom out of the conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
감사합니다.